Hello and welcome to Podcast Extra with myself, Jess, Percival, the wonderful Tim Cameron Kitchen, and we also have some special guests today, including Sam, Nick, and Andy. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. Very happy to have you. We are going to be talking about our predictions for 2024, trying to predict the future. Although I feel like so much has changed in the past year, there's going to be a lot that we can talk about and a lot of things that are getting revved up to go in 2024. And I think everybody's nodding. Everybody's like, there's a lot of things, a lot of different things happening. Tim, how are you feeling about 2024?
I feel like this is the first year where we have, every year we make a predictions video, and most of the time we're doing this for views. And the basic predictions are that things are broadly going to stay the same. I feel this is the year where there are some potential huge updates coming, whether it's generative AI coming into search results, building AI tools. We've got massive changes going on in PPC, in email, in content. Like, this is such a colossal period of change in digital marketing. So I can't wait to see what 2024 brings. And hopefully some of our estimations today come true.
I think so. And we know that absolutely no one will be saying that voice search is the future. So if you're here for that, that is not happening. Tim,
Neil Patel did tweet this week that voice search was the future. Anyway.
Well, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to lead the charge on that. Just so everybody that's watching live knows, we are recording this podcast as we go. So feel free to ask questions, but we have lots to talk about today. So we're really sorry if we don't get to anything. And of course, if you're listening to this on catch up, feel free to leave any comments or questions on the platform that you're listening or watching on. We are going to start with Andy. We're going to talk about some SEO predictions. Andy's rejoined us this week, so I've kind of thrown him straight into this, been like, you're on a podcast this week, have fun. So Andy, what are your thoughts on what's changing with SEO in 2024? Is that too much of a big question?
Well, I think I'm just going to have to jump straight in with the big one, SGE. I know Tim's talked about it a lot, but it is huge for SEO, SGE. So for those of you not unfamiliar with SGE, it stands for Search Generative Experience from Google. And this is Google introducing AI into their algorithm. So obviously that's a big change, but we need to be considering, how's it going to actually change organic search? Because obviously organic's what we're concerned about in SEO. That's what we do. So how's it actually going to change and integrate into organic search? So I've got a couple of areas that I think where we need to be looking at. So one of the main ones is personalization, in how it's going to personalize search results. I can see a big change coming in personalized search results. So Google already personalizes search results to a degree. It's not a huge amount, but you'll get different search results. If we search the same things, you'll get different search results as I will, because you're in a different location, and Google knows that. It also picks up some other things. So it will use your cookies to understand what kind of websites have you looked at in the past, what kind of websites do you like, and that'll affect it. It doesn't have a massive influence on the search results, but you will see different search results, location being the main one. But generative AI will allow Google to go much further in that personalization in how it looks at your search results. It'll be able to start predicting and start actually really understanding, not just, oh, you've looked at these websites, start understanding what you like and start giving you results based on what you like, which could be a huge difference. How much it's going to do that is a bit up in the air, and I wouldn't like to be drawn on that one, because obviously AI takes a lot of computing power. Google gets a lot of searchers. If it's putting a lot of computing power into a lot of searches, that's a lot of cost to Google. So how it's going to balance that remains to be seen. And I don't think it's going to be, it's going to be running its full AI algorithms on every single search you do. That'd just be a waste of money from their point of view. But we're definitely going to be seeing more personalization coming into search results. I mean, Google even mentioned it in terms of when they announced SGE. One of the things that I've seen in terms of people talking about SGA, was often gets overlooked, is it's bringing in this, what they're calling it, the snapshot at the top of the search results, the big result. But what they also mentioned is introducing this will also allow you to ask follow-up questions to Google in your search. So that means personalization. You've got to have personalization if you can ask follow-up questions. Otherwise, the follow-up questions are pointless. the way search currently works, every search you do kind of stands on its own. You're not getting different search results depending on what you previously searched. Slightly different because of your cookies and so on if you've visited sites, but not really. Whereas if you can ask follow-up questions, you absolutely can get different search results. Sorry, I've been talking for quite a while.
It's interesting, Andy, because it kind of links to one of the things I think we're going to see a lot of in PPC, in that consumers are going to expect the perfect solution to their problem. So when we're advertising to consumers, what they're expecting to see now and what's going to lead them to buy from us is something that they feel is exactly right for them. I think SGE's behavior and the fact that search results are going to be so personalized will introduce that expectation in customers.
Yeah, that actually makes me want to ask a question to Sam about content. I know we're kind of veering off course, but I think it feeds in quite nicely. Do you think that people are going to be expecting almost that same personalized experience from content? Or do you think that we can still get away? Well, I say get away. Should we still be creating these big, like, ultimate guide too? Or should we be creating more niche specific content?
I think the latter. I think with the level of personalization we're going to expect to see, and what Nick says with consumers expecting something to be the one-shot perfect solution to their query, in terms of managing content and in terms of creating content, it's probably going to be on a more short-form basis, more specific and direct. You're going to need to leverage a lot more experience in terms of, if you have a very particular niche, you can double down on that and answer very specific questions about specific products and consumers' needs. The ultimate guide approach, I think, will still exist in many different formats. And I don't think it's to say that, okay, stop writing blog content, because there's always going to be some kind of a place for that within search engines. But yeah, I think the personalization aspect really draws a lot more into a narrow focus. So if I need a specific answer to a question, I'm going to expect to find it within a couple of queries. And I think this is what this is all about, right? Refining the search experience. So.
Sorry, go on, Tim.
I was going to say SGE seems to be prioritizing and rewarding and linking to shorter form content, maybe even more than the regular organic results. So it seems like Google is already going that direction. It wants to serve up the very specific answer to that question, rather than, you don't see that many ultimate guides being linked. So yeah, it looks like Google is maybe starting to move in that direction already.
It raises an interesting question around sort of if you're a marketing manager for a business, or if you're the one person responsible for marketing within a business. It changes how much it changes your resource management. So like, where do you spend the most time? Do you spend more time optimizing your landing pages to go further down the funnel and make sure you've got the perfect match at that point? Or are you going more top of funnel, so you're kind of spending more of your time focusing on answering consumers' questions around your subject area? So then, where do you spend your time? And really the answer to that is going to be, how do you put a strategy together to approach that? And that's a big challenge I see coming up. Yeah,
so sort of related to that as well, looking at content and how it fits in with SGE and AI and how that works. One thing I can see being, and again, like you mentioned just a moment ago, Tim, in terms of Google's been going that way a little bit, and it feels like it's going even further that way, is the importance of creating your own data to use in your content, or at least using data in a unique and bespoke way. So not just reiterating what somebody else has said, but maybe a bit clearer or a bit different words. I don't think that's going to cut it as much with the new AI world. It's going to be even more important to be adding something new to what you're discussing and what you're talking about, adding something new and unique to that. That's what's then going to be rewarded. Obviously, Google rewards that to a degree now, but I think it's going to be bigger and more important coming in.
I've got a related question, actually, probably for all of you. And Manish has asked in the questions, Google has approved AI written articles. Should we publish fully AI articles? I feel like AI articles is like old time article spinners. We don't know how safe it is. There's been a lot of focus this week, in particular, in the SEO community. Someone published their tool, which basically scrapes someone's sitemap and then automatically produces, 10,000 articles based on that sitemap and publishes it, and they've seen their rankings take off. And there's a lot of argument about, is this ethical, but also what's Google going to do about this? Because a lot of AI content, when you read it, it does feel really generic. It's difficult to get through, doesn't it? And I think if we see marketers going straight to pure AI written content, it's going to degrade the quality of search results. So how does Google combat this? Do they combat it? And what do we as marketers do? Do we just give up and say, right, we're just going to publish generic garbage, or do we stand and fight, hoping that Google is going to reward us somehow?
I have a few thoughts about AI content, so particularly in advertising, but I think it's universal. So I think that Google won't need to, because I think that users are going to be discerning, and I think the more AI content that we see, the more users are going to be repelled by it and think that it's disingenuous. They're going to have a lack of trust in the business. I think there's a place for AI. I think it's great for people who are trying to kind of hone in, find a different way of putting something, looking for that one phrase that's really going to make a difference. But if you're generating AI ads or AI copy, you are not talking to your customers. No matter how much information you put in, you are not talking to your customers. And I think that customers are going to see that, and they are going to lean towards the brands that are genuine, that have their own voice, that they can trust, that aren't doing that same CTA that everyone else is using.
Yeah, I think it kind of connects as well to what I was just saying just a moment ago about creating your own data and creating something new. AI is great at regurgitating existing info. It's not so good at coming up with new info, and I think that's where it's the part where the difference is going to come in. But yeah, I've not actually seen an AI article yet that is as good as an article that can actually be written by an actual proper copywriter. You can always tell, like you were saying, you can literally sit down, read it, you go, this was written by AI straight away, and yeah, they're just not as good. They're just something that just feels off about them, and like Nick's saying, users will react to that, and they will it will change their behavior. So AI has its place, and it's a great tool, but it's a tool. It doesn't replace the people. It helps them. It's for them to use to whatever they're using it for. There's lots of different uses, so we're not going to go through all of them, but it's a great tool. But yeah, it doesn't replace a good marketer.
I can't reiterate that enough from content. I've experimented a lot with AI in terms of creating blog posts, refining call to actions, playing around with like landing page structures. The key takeaway for me is what you said, Andy. AI is the tool. It can be used extensively in ideation and coming up with fresh ideas. And I mentioned resource management earlier for marketing managers or people creating content. It does take some of the mental legwork away there, so you can sort of ideate a bit more freely and just say, come up with some blog titles for me, and it might come up with something that you think is quite unique and interesting, and you take that, refine it further. But the ultimate analogy, I think, really is like, think about the first sort of like animated film you saw. Like for me, it might be Toy Story, and you go back 20 years and look at it now and you go, that's not real. I can tell that's not real. Obviously that's not real. Or like CGI within a film is probably a better analogy. It's like, that's obviously fake. I can see that's obviously fake. I feel like we're going to go through this now with AI, where it's really convincing and compelling. You think, oh, what an authentic piece, and how clever we are to have come up with this AI generated article. And in 5 minutes, you're going to be in real time in the next year. We're going to see, okay, you can really obviously see through brands that have not invested their time in creating authentic content or relied on the EEAT of their content and just opted for the kind of more is more approach and generated just loads of AI content. It's going to be really easy to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on to kind of talk a little bit more about PPC, I'm sure we'll circle back to SEO and content in a moment. But I'm just curious, we've had a question about it as well. How do you think search behavior will change? Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I definitely find myself asking longer questions to Google, almost expecting that ChatGPT style answer. And then I'm getting these search results. And I'm almost already a little bit disappointed with them. So I'm like, oh, if I would have asked ChatGPT that, I would have got a much more full answer. And I'm just curious to know whether you think that search behavior will change or if I'm just an outlier, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one in terms of how does the behavior change, because user behavior is what drives everything. Google can make this brilliant SGE system, but if users don't change their behavior, it's not going to stay around that long. It'll disappear. If the users don't change and start using it, it'll disappear. We saw it with ChatGPT when Microsoft integrated it into Bing. You had a massive flood of traffic go over to Bing for about a week, 2 weeks, and then it all came back to Google because users stay, and it's going to come down to how useful it actually is for the user in its implementation. That's what's going to drive the change. So yeah, it's in terms of how it changes, especially as I was talking earlier about personalization and asking follow-up questions, that if that really does take off and people start really using that and using the feature to ask follow-up questions, that could have a huge impact on SEO, because obviously that's going to have a big impact on what keyword data we're going to get. And keyword data still is, really important for SEO. When we see a change to that, that's going to drive a big change in how we're going to have to react to that, because we're going to be seeing different things, especially if, like say, if you're getting personalized results. So you're getting completely different results to me if we're searching the same thing. That can then have this big impact. And I think if we do start seeing that behavior, we're going to have to shift more towards marketing towards the individual. And Google's been going that way for a little while. They did it with RankBrain to a degree, with intent rather than keyword matching, and that sort of shift there. We're going to have to shift more towards marketing towards the individual and marketing towards the need rather than the search.
And I wonder whether, because we're already, I feel like within PPC, we're already kind of maybe a little bit shifted ahead in that we are looking a lot more at audience signals and user behavior within PPC and automated strategies within there. And I wonder whether, with SGE, whether organic is going to have to go down that route more. And instead of relying on keyword data, marketers are going to have to be really, really familiar with their audience and know who they're marketing to.
Yeah.
And completely kind of utilize that data over search data.
Yeah, and this is one of my other predictions in terms of it's going to be much more important to have combined marketing, so using multiple marketing channels as we shift more towards that. Because obviously a lot of the data that you're using in PPC, you just don't get in SEO. It's different data sources. So it's going to become more and more important to have those multiple marketing streams so you can bring the data together from all of them and use them to guide all your different marketing efforts. That's not to say SEO on its own won't be able to work, or PPC on its own won't be able to work. I certainly believe they will be able to. It's going to be far more effective, though, to have those combined offerings and making sure they're working together. Those services are aligned with each other and supporting each other.
Yeah, I think multi-channel and omni-channel marketing is going to be more important than ever next year. Nick, you've touched a little bit on PPC already and sort of the changes that the SG will have on it. Do you think that people are going to need to rethink their whole Google ad strategy, or is it more about small changes or like attitude changes?
So I think we've been having to rethink our ad strategy for quite some time now, and there are a multitude of factors that are affecting how we advertise to customers. I think in 2024, a huge factor is going to be around trust and value. We've entered a cost of living crisis, and as a result, consumers are going to be much more discerning, and they're going to want things that represent not necessarily the cheapest thing, but the most value for money. So if you're buying a piece of furniture, you're going to want a piece of furniture that will last you for years, rather than potentially churning through, a number of coffee tables over a period of time. People are going to be thinking about sustainability in things like the clothes that they're wearing, the products they're consuming. And within advertising, we need to be able to reflect that. We need to be able to talk to our customers and show them that what they are receiving is value for money, because you don't have the luxury of the bricks and mortar shops where people can touch the product, they can see the product, they can understand the quality of the product. What you need to be able to do is reflect that in, a short space on the search engine results pages. That's not going to be easy. So it's going to take a lot of creativity, a lot of talented minds to really get that value over to others.
Nick, I've got a question about use of generative AI in ads. I know we've had a chat previously about whether it's worth using like generative AI copy in ads.
Yeah.
But as well as that, as more of these tools build in image gen AI, is there a danger that, that beautiful coffee table that you see in the ad turns up and actually that wasn't a photo of it at all. That was created in Midjourney and the thing you've got looks absolute crap. And people stop believing in what they see online?
Well, yes, and also I think even further than that, there's the legal ramifications, because we do have the Advertising Standards Agency, and it's there for a reason, to protect people from misleading adverts. And I think if we're using generative AI to create product images, are we in fact falsely advertising these products? I've seen some of the ones created by Google Ads. They do not represent the products that are being sold accurately. And therefore, I feel that there is some risk to using them, and that marketers need to be really cautious about it, because what they don't want to happen is for someone to make a purchase based on an ad, and actually receive something completely different. Now, you can mitigate this by saying, well, the images on our website are different, but if you've got those images on your website, then why not use them within your advertising anyway? It's something that you can do. I mean, where things might differ is in lead gen. So if we're offering a service, for example, using AI potentially to generate some sort of image that represents the service could work. But again, do I necessarily think it's warranted? I'm not sure. I think that you can get far better stock image if you're desperate than the quality of like AI generated imagery of humans, for example. Do you want to risk having a picture of someone with like 10 fingers on one hand and 2 on the other? So yeah, I understand the temptation, but I do think the risks probably outweigh the benefits at the moment.
Yeah, I do actually have something to say on that quickly. I think it's worth watching what the big players are doing and seeing the response to that. I saw the Disney company had posted some Thanksgiving image with sort of the characters from the parks that seemed like it had been generated with AI. And a lot of the comments are like, why does it look like this character has a severed head? Why is this missing? The table of Thanksgiving food had like 2 foods on it, and that was it. And it was meant to be this really warm image. And they just kind of obviously put some information into AI and thought that'll do and posted it. And people are starting to notice this stuff and are starting to understand. And I think, there was all that stuff where there was AI generated images of the Pope that ended up going quite mainstream and then end up in the newspaper. So even the people who aren't as technologically savvy are going to be becoming aware of this. So it really is, I think, a case of understanding whether the risk is worth it. But let the big players with the money make those mistakes first. I think let the Disney company make those mistakes and learn from them.
Yeah.
I've got something to add in terms of content on that. And I think the challenge revolves around creating quality content at scale and maintaining that sort of detail, expertise, and authenticity, really, because the temptation with talking about AI is it's a tool that can, great exponentially increase the amount of content you can create. So going back to that more is more attitude, you can generate a lot of content that you could try and rank for numerous keywords across, a particular area, but it's about getting found out, really, in the end, and realizing that perhaps the content that you generate should be focused more on the kind of the quality over quantity. That's certainly where I'm seeing the most sort of results within the campaigns that I work on.
It sounds like a cop-out, doesn't it? But it's not just about getting traffic. It's not just about getting the visitor to your website or ranking. That's utterly meaningless. The only thing that does is increase your hosting fees, unless you're actually converting them and making a sale, and that sale is satisfied and recommends and repeat purchases. And it's almost like we might be moving into a time where being authentic is actually a USP, which is kind of weird. Like, it could be that if people get skeptical of what they're seeing, then actually that sort of humanity and the technological solutions like image watermarking, whatever happens that we see, which sort of signals that there is some humanity behind this business or this product or this ad, actually becomes a real selling point for people, which would be a bizarre situation to be in. But I think anytime there is an easy solution, you'll get the scammers, you'll get the lazy businesses that rush into it, start getting loads of traction, people start getting skeptical and then pull back. And then it's, where do we go from here? And do people start trusting more if they can see a person and, they can tell that business is legit. It should be really interesting either way, I think.
Yeah, I think if we're going to use AI in society, it has to be for the benefit of the people, the consumers, in the case of marketing. So if we're using AI to cheat consumers and, lazily produce thin content or poor quality ads, then really we're just doing people a disservice. We need to be utilizing AI to provide people with what they need to have, what they need to see, what they need to use, which is why, we've got tools like SGE, which we're really excited about, because actually it's going to allow us to add more value to our customers' lives. I think business owners should be really, really excited about that side of SGE and AI.
Yeah, it is definitely pretty exciting. And I think it's going to open up some very new and different opportunities for a lot of businesses. Tim, this is kind of a question for you. We've had a question on the live stream asking, should Google be scared of losing business? Because surely businesses aren't going to want to make content anymore. Maybe they're not going to trust Google if they feel like Google's stealing their traffic, so they won't want to spend on PPC ads. What are your kind of thoughts on this?
I think Google is scared of losing business. I think that's why it's bringing out SGE, because it can see that people will go to ChatGPT to search those questions that they may have previously gone to Google. So Google sort of has to build a ChatGPT into its search if it's going to keep those people on search. And then at the moment, we don't know what the ad product looks like with SGE. I don't think that they're going to release SGE publicly without an ad product. It's $162 billion of Google's annual revenue is generated from advertising and search. So they're not going to roll out something that cannibalizes that. I think Google is very scared of losing business. That's why they had their code red. That's why Larry and Sergey came back in. And that's why we're seeing them rush out so many AI products at the moment, some of them looking pretty half finished and some of them looking very distinctly average. But absolutely, this is a survival fight for Google for maybe the first time in its history. But I do think that they'll win, and I think whatever happens in digital marketing, Google wins. That seems to be the rule. So I think they'll get it figured out. And people have said in the chat, like, user behavior is difficult to change. And as Andy mentioned about Bing chat, yes, Bing Chat got some attention, but that quickly died down when people realized actually fundamentally it's not really as useful as Google. So I think Google has that sort of incumbent advantage. And I do think they'll get it figured out, but they're absolutely scared for sure.
Yeah, I don't think Google releases anything without it being easy to monetize. I mean, you think we get ads in our email accounts thanks to Google. We get ads when we enjoy videos on YouTube. We get ads when we visit blogs. So there's no way that they would invest so much into a platform and not monetize it in some way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. I think they know the risks, and they're definitely not going to throw themselves under. Hence why I think it took them a little bit longer to make moves than, for instance, Bing, who maybe had a little bit less to lose by adding a chat feature. So yeah, I think 2024 is going to be the year that we see what's going to change. Sam, hi.
Hello.
It'd be great to hear some of your content predictions for 2024. They don't have to be AI related, but I can imagine they probably will be. So it'd be great to hear a little bit from you about that. I know you've spoken a little bit about content already, but
yeah, totally. It's hard to get away from AI next year. It's just so all-encompassing in terms of what it means for consumers. But what I'm really interested in, particularly in my role as the content marketing team manager at Exposure Ninja, is how are marketers using AI, how are they using it ethically, and how are they using it to drive the kind of results that we want? Because ultimately, we've talked about how businesses position themselves, how they can stay authentic, but also you've got this like monstrous challenge of loads of people using AI to kind of to leverage their situation without really much sort of thought and sort of fewer resources going into that. So when I looked at the let's get the name right, it's the 2024 outlook for B2B content marketing benchmarks, budgets, trends put together by the Content Marketing Institute. A lot of what content marketing managers report on is the lack of resources. And within the resource management aspect that I've mentioned before, it's having the right tools and knowing how to use those tools. So my prediction is that AI is going to have to be standardized in some way within content marketing to kind of make sure that results are as consistent as possible across time. So, for example, tone of voice is incredibly important for authenticity. So, how do you represent your brand in the spoken word, in the written word, sorry, as opposed to the spoken word? One of the ways to do that is to refine your prompts within AI. Say you're using ChatGPT, you need to refine the way that you talk to the system to make sure that you're going to get consistent results. If you then just take that and copy paste and put it on your website, with the developments within ChatGPT and within the developments within AI, you're going to get different results. So it relies on having a keen marketer behind it and someone with a really good knowledge of the written word and how to represent a brand to sort of tie all of this together in a sort of nice cohesive way. So yeah, my prediction is making sure that AI is used effectively and ethically, but also that we have marketers that are extremely knowledgeable about it and using it in a way that is going to talk about their brand in the way that they want to be represented. Again, going back to sort of authority and authenticity. And really that's how you're going to build that kind of thought leadership to make sure that you're ending up at the top of Google when all is said and done and all the AI articles have sort of withered and not done what they're designed to do. And so I think to refine that, my prediction is that overcoming resource management will require a lot more focus on the ethical use of AI, but also building knowledge around how to use it and how to use it properly.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think, yeah, it's very easy to just put a question or tell an AI to write a blog post, but whether that's consistent with previous blog posts, or even if you're generating imagery, whether those things are consistent is a whole other story. Sam, I'd also like to ask you, we've got quite a few questions about multi-channel and how to distribute your content. Will anything change with that in 2024, do you think?
I think, yes, I do. I think if we take content creation and content distribution as two sort of separate activities at the moment, like, for example, you are creating a blog post. You've created a blog post that's got a sort of informational intent, and that's not really enough to just put it on your website if this is something that you've poured so many resources into to create this sort of thought leadership piece. Then the content distribution aspect is going to look different when you've got to compete with SGE. So a more something that we're really interested in at the moment is how digital PR is going to develop in 2024. Talking about this even today with my team was really interesting to see how people were sort of leveraging different tools, but also methodologies to get content distributed to places where it's going to be seen, and it's going to be seen by lots of people. So if we're trying to multiply eyeballs on our content, a really effective strategy for that is digital PR. But digital PR in 2024 is not going to look the same as it did last year because of the developments with SGE and search. One of the things that we were talking about was how sort of the one-to-one pitching within digital PR will still be so important. If you've got journalists who are looking for stories and, looking for ways that they're going to fill space on their websites and newspapers, and we're talking online and in print, it's having those established relationships with journalists to be able to have you as the contact, you as the authority on your specific subject area, and therefore being able to sort of have that established relationship going into a new phase of digital PR and saying, look, we're still here, we're still talking about this subject, we're still the thought leaders. And it's the relationship that's going to be important for certainly the content distribution side of things, looking at that. Beyond searches, digital PR is kind of the focus, and that's the thing that I'm most interested in as a development point.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think authenticity and being kind of an authority and offering that kind of more personal aspect that isn't just sending out AI generated responses to journalists and other publications, I think is a huge part of this. This is kind of a question for everybody, but I'm going to start with Tim. Do you think that user generated content is going to be a big part of 2024? Sinead, who's our PPC strategist, my brain went then, has said that she thinks that social and user generated content are going to be massive in 2024. And I'd love to know if anybody else has any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this is one of the ways that humanity will counteract the flood of AI generated sludge that is pouring down the pipe towards our open mouths. And even if we look at SEO, UGC is going to impact SEO. That's why Google's Perspectives feature is coming out. They were talking this week about adding markup for forum and discussion sites. And why they're doing this? They're doing this so that Google can more easily rank user-generated content and discussions inside forum posts. So the updated search quality rater guidelines have specific information for the search quality raters to look at discussion posts and work out what the EEAT is of those posts. And I think that's how we go in two directions. We've got the mass sort of AI generated stuff, including SGE, and then we've got the individual experiences, the individual perspectives. And people who get fed up with one or the other, they have the alternative. So I think we will see this. I think it will be the antidote to a lot of the worst parts of AI that we'll see coming our way.
Yeah, it's an interesting time because at the moment we have 4 distinct generations online who have different patterns of user behavior and different areas where they choose to buy, they choose to make buying decisions, and they want to see themselves in that. And I think we've got UGC right in some areas. I think particularly with the younger generational marketing, we're seeing a lot more UGC. I think we can certainly start leveraging it a bit more for our mature audiences, for our Gen X, for our baby boomers, having that marketing out there. I recently worked with someone who was creating UGC aimed at new grandparents, and it was really refreshing to see mature user-generated content, and I'd love to see more of that online next year.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never even considered that. But I think for me, it's the notes and the follow features that were sort of looking to be built into SGE, where you can see users having more of an input on search. So somebody can comment on a piece of information and then follow it for updates, and other people can feed into that. So it's it's how almost in a to leverage what we're trying to say, leverage more brand awareness. You're going to have a more active and proactive and reactive stance to what's happening in search engines. So if you see a trending topic, can your business or brand comment on it? And that's part of your brand having the input there, as opposed to relying on the user input to kind of say, oh, I know this brand does great dog harnesses, or this brand does great packaging supplies, etc. So putting your brand in there and taking that proactive stance to addressing those things with SGE.
Yeah. And not just being kind of putting UGC in the bracket of paid social as well, because actually it can be utilized all over the place. So we can see it on YouTube, and as we now see new Google ads campaign types out there, but also even on site. I mean, you can have UGC on your own site to really give that trust factor. You can have UGC in your outreach to show people exactly what your product's about, and it all comes back to that authenticity and trust, and being able to show your consumers that actually your product's the real deal.
Yeah, I think one area where I was talking about UGC is where Google will be considering they'll have to tread quite lightly, is they've already had a few legal challenges in the US about sort of being accused of pushing a certain political agenda and so on. And I think they'll need to be very careful with ranking UGC in terms of how that could potentially come across to certain groups. And obviously they don't want a legal scandal. Nobody does. So they're going to need to be quite careful in terms of how they do that. And I mean, the irony is both sides of the aisle have accused them of political agenda, which always makes me smile when companies are accused by both the left and right wing of being overly left and right wing. It generally means, in my opinion, they're quite centrist, so they'll need to be quite careful in terms of how they approach that, because obviously, if they do get accused, or they've got such a powerful position in terms of how much of search they own. If they do get accused of pushing a certain political bias, that could go very badly for them. So they need to be careful with the UGC.
There's also a lot marketers can do to bring diversity into user-generated content. Again, using people of different ages, people of ethnicities, people of different genders. Representation within user-generated content is so important, and it's really important that marketers reach out to different influencers, different customers, to show the breadth of people in society.
Andy mentioned it before as well. It's like rewarding new perspectives, search engines rewarding new perspectives and new ideas. And I guess that can kind of go both ways. So there's the introducing more of a diverse and inclusive search experience, but then there's also rewarding new perspectives in a more negative sense, where it's if you just need to say something new about a subject, then is that the right answer? Is that the best answer? So it's an interesting challenge, but I think ultimately relying on that kind of diversity inclusion is probably the most ethical approach, certainly, but certainly the most useful one to encompass as many people as you can with, targeting such a wide range of consumers.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a very, very interesting point. And I think we're probably going to see, I'm intrigued how this notes feature plays out, because there's definitely the opportunity there for if somebody doesn't agree with what's being said or doesn't like the creator, it's quite easy for them to comment on it and say, yeah, this recipe was terrible. My whole family got food poisoning because they've got beef with the cooking site, so you're definitely going to have to be careful of these things. We've been talking for quite a while now, which is wonderful, but I can imagine anybody listening or watching live could be like, what on earth do I do next? It would be great to kind of hear from each of you what a person should do if they want to go away and do something SEO, they want to do something PPC, they want to do something content. What should their next step be after listening to this podcast? It would be great to start with you, Andy, since we started with you back at the beginning.
Okay, so SEO. So what should be your next steps in preparing for 2024 for SEO? It's in a bit of a weird position at the moment because we've got this huge change that we've been just talking about going, but it's not quite here yet. It's just that bit further away, and we don't know we know it's going to be this huge change, but we don't know exactly how it's going to come through because Google's still tweaking it. They're still testing it. They're still doing things. There's the whole European issues with AI and legal ramifications, and so they're going how they come out. So from SEO, the best thing I would say you could be doing at the moment is staying close to SEO news, because we know it's changed. We know this change is coming. We know it's going to be big. We don't know what the details are going to look like yet. So stay close to the SEO news so you can be ready as those details start. What's the word I'm looking for? Sort of crystallizing, sort of forming. You can be in best position to respond to those. So there's a big change coming. At the moment, we don't know exactly. We've got a good idea of what it's going to be looking like, but we don't know what the exact details are. So I don't want to say, go and do this, because that might change. So at this point, it's keep close to the news so you're ready for that change when it happens. Be prepared for that change coming in.
Yeah, definitely agree. And if you need to get that news from someplace, we frequently upload videos about how you can kind of start prepping for SGE and start prepping for these changes in 2024. So subscribe to our YouTube channel over on YouTube if you haven't already, to kind of be the first to know about our sort of SGE discoveries. Let us do the hard work for you, I suppose. Andy's like, he's already done the work. So anyway, before I put my foot in it anymore, Nick, what would you say the next thing that people should do in terms of PPC to help them prepare for 2024?
I would say talk to your customers, survey your customers, ring your customers, learn about your customers, just absolutely everything, so you have a really clear idea of the audience that you want to attract, because that audience is going to be where your PPC activity is going to have to go. So the more you know about them, the more you understand their shopping habits, not just why they shop from you, but where else they shop, where they live, who they live with, anything you can get hold of. That data is going to come in so much for you when you're creating your ad copy, your creative content. So yeah, that would be my tip for everyone.
Wonderful. And Sam, what would your suggestion be for next steps when it comes to content?
I'd follow on from Andy's advice and stay close to the news, keep an eye on search engines and how they develop. Ultimately, when the future isn't here just yet, so there's no need to panic. But I would say being adaptable in your strategy to content is going to be really important as changes get rolled out. If you've got your next year's worth of content planned out, that's fantastic. Don't put that in the bin just because you've got updates coming up. What's going to be most important is how you approach the content creation process and how you're going to distribute that content to get the most eyeballs on your brand and your business. Realistically, it's going to be iterative changes. I don't think we're going to see like a wholesale change overnight and your content strategy is going to be meaningless. But it's going to be important to make sure that, for example, if you've got your ultimate guide planned at the end of the year, maybe you're going to want to distribute that content more over a few months. If you see SG updates around, your particular subject area or your niche. So don't panic, be adaptable, keep an eye on the SEO news, subscribe to the Exposure Ninja YouTube channel.
Thanks for the plug at the end there. Very much appreciated. Tim, I'm sure you also have an idea of maybe what you think the next step for people should be to prepare for 2024. What are your thoughts?
I would actually echo what everyone has said. So stay up to date with the sort of the technical side, but exactly what Nick said, I think she completely nailed it. Let's not lose sight of the fact that the point of marketing is to persuade another human being to do something. And I think the more that we get detached from that by thinking about AI or the latest whatever, there are aspects of digital marketing where the people who are doing it are so detached from the end user that they convince themselves of all sorts of alternative truths, like the key to success is producing 65,000 variants of a particular ad. And what they haven't done is thought about, okay, what's the message that's actually going to resonate with my customer and make them buy? And they've convinced themselves that they're playing a different game to the game that they actually should be playing, which is a good salesperson standing in front of a good prospect, convincing them to buy something. So if in doubt, do what you need to do to convert the customer, and the latest and greatest things. Those are just tools in our arsenal to make that sale. That's what I think marketing should be about, and I hope that we don't lose sight of that in 2024.
Yeah, I think in a way this could be quite positive for all of us if we get to be more person first. I think that would be really fantastic. Thank you all so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing all your thoughts. It's been really wonderful, and I think we've had a really nice range of perspectives. Obviously, you all come from different teams, but I think it's been nice to kind of hear how these things connect together. Before we go, of course, don't forget to get your free website marketing review from exposureninja.com/review. It doesn't take you very long to fill in, and we'll send you a 15-minute review of your website and marketing. Thank you all so much for being here, and maybe we'll see some of these faces back in the future. We shall see. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Right.